Hello and welcome to this new video. Today we're going to set up a site-to-site VPN with MikroTik and AWS. However, this procedure is the same for all routers or firewalls and can also be applied to bootable firewalls. But before we start, I want to show you what I did, why I did it, and what we're going to do, so that if you've never done this before, you'll have an overview of what I'm about to do, and then of course, if you want, you can do it yourself. Because first of all, here we have the lab that we've already seen in other videos. What did I do? So, first of all, since I'm working from home, like many of you, and not in a company, so I don't have direct access to a public IP, I had to set up a port forwarding here on ports 4500 and 500 to allow the VPN to go through. Then what we're going to do today is, this is me, the corporate user. We are going to set up a site-to-site VPN so we can access internal resources on AWS. Why? Because this way I can work directly, so I don't have to expose services on the internet. Let me give you an example. These are my machines. I have two, one Linux and one Windows. Right now, to access this Windows machine, which is of course not ideal, I connect via RDP using the AWS public IP, which obviously isn't secure and shouldn't be done for security reasons. The only way is to access it from inside, but to do that, you basically have two options. So once we've set up the VPN, from this internal IP address, which is 172.31.46.39, I'll be able to access RDP or any internal resource on my AWS. Now let's move on to the configuration and all the necessary steps, both on the AWS side and on the client side. Once you've registered on AWS at this point, type VPN in the search bar and you'll see VPN Virtual VPN Site-to-Site Connection appear. Click on Virtual Private Network Gateway. There are already some examples here, but I started from scratch so you can see all the steps. So scroll down and click on the first gateway. Here we need to create a new one. So at the top right, let's give it a name. For example, from Office. This is the standard AWS BGP number. Here we need to enter our public IP, and in my case, the IP is this one, so we paste it here. We leave this as it is and keep everything else as default, then we create it. Next, always following these steps, we create a virtual private gateway. Here at the top right, we give it a name, for example, and leave the default ASN. Perfect, then click Create. Notice here, you see the attachment. Here, our network needs to be connected, so click on Action, then Attach to VPC, and this is my VPC. It takes a little while to attach, so don't worry. Let's go back here to the site-to-site VPN connection. At this point, we will create a VPN, specifically a CrazyNet, using a US gateway, our cheat, and we will go for a virtual private gateway. Click on Virtual Private Gateway and select this particular one, which is the one we just created. For the customer ID gateway, click, and here our public IP address appears. See here, this is my public IP. Obviously yours will be different. Then the local IPv4 address is optional and the remote address is also optional. So if you want, you can certainly set them. You put your local network address and the address of the network you wish to share. Once that's done with dynamic required BGP, click on Create VPN Connection, and again, it will take a little while, but please don't worry. While it's attaching and creating all the necessary configuration, we click on our site-to-site VPN, go here, download the configuration, look for the most recent version, which is 6.47, but don't worry because we'll use it for our specific purpose. Download it and take it, and here it is. Now I'll set it up so you can see both the MikroTik web box and of course the configuration details and all the steps to meticulously follow. So here we are. As you can clearly see, it says IPsec tunnel 1 and it immediately tells us what we need to do. So on IPsec, go to proposals, click plus, and I'll also use the name suggested by AWS. You can change the number if you want. Then the algorithm is SK1S128. After that, this lifetime one. This is the default setting. Click apply and OK. At this point, let's go here. It says policy. MikroTik manages routing in a not so conventional way, so we'll do this step later. Because if you add it first, it will overwrite the existing routing rules, so we'll do it last. So let's skip it for now. Go to profile, click plus. Here it's pretty simple. Just follow exactly what it says. ES128, then MODP 2024, 8 hours lifetime. If there's a DPD space, 10 failed connections, 3, and apply. Okay, Then let's create the profile. So profile, delete this, add always use the suggested name, DMUS, so you don't get confused, 128 MODP 1024, 8 hours DPD, 10 failed connections, 3, and at this point first OK, apply OK, then go to peer, here add, always select the suggested name, which are the friendly profiles. For the address, I put the AWS one, which is located here, and for the local address, I can't put the IP address because being behind NAT, I need to put the public IP of my router, which is this one. Select the profile, exchange mode main, apply and OK. Go to identity, click plus, it already selects the pre-shared key profile, and I select the VPN password, paste it here, press apply and OK. Go to active peer, it's already active, but we don't have any policy defined. So at this point, go to policy, which was the first step. We need to create the two policies. Let's proceed to create the policy. We need to create two distinct policies. The first, by clicking on peer tunnel, copies as the source IP the AWS address, which is AWS, but the peering sign, and paste it, action default proposal, apply and OK. Then I create the second policy, which is the proposal peer tunnel. Here I enter the IP address of the network I want to share with destination 172.31.0.0/16 and apply, and as you can clearly see, it's established active peer and I have the VPN. At this point, let's move on to the BGP configuration. For the BGP configuration, we obviously need to follow the specified steps, but before going into BGP, we need to copy this. Go to IP addresses, add this address 169/30, and obviously select the interface you use to go out and close. Then go to routing BGP, add, here we can call it BGP AWS local AS65000 router ID. You can use this IP address. It's not strictly mandatory, but let's be safe. The remote address is this IP address, and the remote AS instead, we find it here in the BGP configuration, and here it is. Then for the local role, we need to select eBGP, go to hold time 30 and keep alive, apply. Now we need to set the filter. Setting the filter just means telling BGP which network we specifically want to send to AWS. To do this, go to IP, firewall, dist, and we say AWS and put our network, which in this case is 180.268.20.0/24, close here. Output network, they haven't given it yet, but I have it, output network AWS, okay, session, and you see the session is established. Now, if everything works well, we should also find it here on root, and in fact, here it is. If we hover for a moment with the mouse, it says dynamic active BGP and destination address 17.31.0.0/16 via our peering, and so we have our BGP session. Then, if we scroll down a bit further, we find that we also need to set up NAT. To do this, just go here to IP, IPsec, close this because it's confusing. Sorry, just go to IP, firewall, NAT, add source NAT. It says source NAT, your local subnet, okay, 68.20.0/24. Then it says the network we want to reach. So AWS 172.31.0.0/16. Action accept, clearly, action accept, okay, apply. Then it tells us another important thing. We need to create a second NAT rule, apply, source, this destination, the second IP, okay, apply, okay, and we're done. The rest is for the second tunnel because clearly if one tunnel goes down, there will be the second. However, this is how you configure BGP with AWS and of course the VPN with AWS, our BGP. And here we are. At this point, your infrastructure, your office is now connected with AWS. You can work directly with the internal AWS IP addresses, obviously if it's not required and if you don't want to expose your infrastructure or your services on the internet to work. Let's look at the AWS side instead, what it tells us if I click here on CA brands in Pazzo.